Let's go live here. Welcome, everyone. It's time for Tea and Chat with your spiritual guide. My name's Julia Harrell. I'm a clairvoyant teacher, healer, and guide, and this is a space to help transform sensitivity into strength. Today's show is Am I Highly Sensitive? Open Your Hidden Superpowers. The show is designed for intuitives, empaths, highly sensitive people, and we discuss using your spiritual development uh, through a method that helps you uncover spiritual gifts and reclaim your power. Now, since today's topic is Am I Highly Sensitive? HSP or highly sensitive person has become a trait, a personality trait since the 90s. It was Dr. Elaine Aron that coined this claim. I am not a therapist. I am not an expert on HSP. I want to talk about my experience as a highly sensitive person, growing up hearing the normal stuff. You're too sensitive. That's a problem. And thinking I had this handicap to deal with to where I am today as a spiritual teacher and realizing that sensitivity was part of a bigger unlocking of abilities that helped to open up my awareness in the world on a different level and help to access those abilities more. If you're new to the show, welcome. It's great to have you here. Love to hear from you in the live chat. The format here is I'll discuss the topic for a little bit, and I would invite your comments in, excuse me, in the live chat, where you just might get a little mini reading on your question. And if you have a question and you don't want a mini reading, just say, I have a question, don't care for a reading. All right. So today we're looking at Am I Highly Sensitive? And learning what that means. And the biggest point I want to make right off the bat is I'll go through kind of the list of the things you usually hear here in a minute. But the biggest point I want to make is yes, you already know you're sensitive, but it doesn't mean you have to isolate yourself or hide under a blanket and just accept that this problem is there. Yeah, that's part of it, but you can also change your relation to the energies you're picking up. So we're going to talk about that more in depth and some tools about, well, how do you do that? So let's get into all of that. So this term highly sensitive has really only been around a little while. It was 1990s that Dr. Elaine Aron, she's researcher, came up with this HSP idea. It is pretty well known these days. It wasn't around when I was a kid, and I would have just said, I'm sensitive. I'm aware of other people's emotions because I feel it too. And it's overwhelming. And I just have this problem. People said you're too emotional. And so I just accepted, oh, okay, I'm too emotional. But I came to learn later on, wait a minute, there were other things opening up, and there was no reference around me. Excuse me, maybe I should have some tea and we'll chat. There was no reference around me of how to deal with that, or even that there was a way to deal with that. And as I look around the internet today, I see a lot of lists. Are you this, that, and the other? But there's not a lot of tools about how to manage that. And there are tools here to manage that. Yes, you need to take care of your boundaries. That's good for everybody, isn't it? But there's ways to shift your energy. So let's take a look at this. So um, uh, Dr. Elaine Aron came up with this idea, and you can take these tests, and her test has some of these common traits on here. And keep in mind, this is a personality trait. You don't get a blood test and go, oh, yeah, I am 30% sensitive. And, you know, today the statistics will tell you it's like almost a quarter of the population is highly sensitive. So we're not isolated. We're not problem children to put in the corner. We're like you and me, we're part of the population. Here's a list of some of the things. See how many you fit with, and let me know in the comments. Those of you watching live, if you use the live stream comments, I'll see them. I won't see other comments. So I'm easily overwhelmed by strong sensory input. Other people's moods affect me. How many of these do you relate to? I tend to be sensitive to pain. I find myself needing to withdraw during busy days to bed or into a darkened room or a place where I can have some privacy and relief from stimulation. I'm particularly sensitive and affects to caffeine. I'm a little over caffeinated this morning. I had green tea already, so I'm having peppermint right now. I hope you're joining me with some tea as well. Here's a couple more lists on Dr. Aaron's questionnaire. I'm deeply moved by arts or music. My nervous system feels frazzled, so they have to go off by myself sometimes. I'm conscientious, aware of others. I startle easily. Anyway, the list goes on. There's like 29 things here that she gets into. And it's pretty, if you're listening to this channel right now and you are brought here by the title, Am I highly sensitive? Am I a highly sensitive person? Am I an HSP? You've already taken the questionnaires. You already know that. But now, what can you do about it, right? So I grew up with this too. It was earlier, right? It was like before the internet. You can't just go join an online membership group and be with like-minded souls. I'm trying to fit in like crazy with everybody around me, but I would think about things different. And I was very sensitive. Somebody would walk in the door and I knew the emotional state of how they were. Let me give you an example of an HSP young man with this. So, young man, 9 years old, and it's Christmas time, and he's downstairs playing with cousins and stuff. A relative walks in the door. Usually people come up and greet them. It's an older relative who had just lost her spouse. And so she's still in her grieving process. This young HSP kid, and mind you, he'd been labeled one of the labels, like learning disabled or something, LD. But I look at him and I'm like, whoa, he's really, really creative and very sensitive. And in fact, he's a very talented artist. As a kid, he could really draw. So this HSP kid comes upstairs. Hey, good to see you. Give you a hug. All right, going back downstairs to play. So you don't think much about it, right? So later in the day, but realize the relative is in grief. Her energy vibration is in grief. And he gave her a hug. He tapped into that energy, but it didn't manifest until later. So check this out. So it was about maybe 2 hours later in the day, and a group of the family went to go bowling and do an activity that every age can do. So they're bowling, and then all this having fun. It's Christmas, and everything's joyous, right? And then all of a sudden, this young boy, the 9-year-old, has an emotional meltdown. He's very just all of a sudden overcome with grief. It was the nature of the energy. And he said, I'm sad about a horse that died. So all of a sudden, in the middle of a bowling game at Christmas time with relatives, that everything about that he enjoys. What happened was the only reference he knew at that time, at that age, to grief was when a horse died. And that was very important to him. So he hasn't experienced other big griefs yet. Well, what was happening was the energy of grief had been in his space from when he hugged the relative that came in the door 2 hours earlier, and it had been like vibrating and vibrating and vibrating and vibrating and get louder and louder until it was just overwhelming. So all of a sudden, in the middle of this bowling game, he starts crying. He's uncontrollably upset. And the mom goes over and does the regular mom stuff. And of course, as soon as you tell someone that's sensitive to calm down, it's okay. And you see that now the parents upset because the kid's upset. And now it's kind of amplified. That's kind of tricky too, isn't it? But there's a way around that. So this is what was playing out. The child is just uncontrollably upset. I'm upset. I'm upset. Don't know what to do. And I actually happened to be there. So I went over to the young man, and I'm looking at it at first too, because I was still pretty new in this. I'd been doing this clairvoyant training for a couple years, but I didn't know all the ins and outs yet, but I knew the tools. So I just sat with him for a minute and I grounded myself first. I'm like, okay, ground myself. And then my natural tendency is going to be like many of you watching, oh, there's a problem, we got to snuff it out. Well, pause on that. Part of the training too is neutrality and let things be because they're already there, right? So let him be where he already is. And so I ground myself and then I helped him ground a little bit. I hadn't figured out what he was going through because it didn't register to me that he picked up grief energy 2 hours ago. I was just looking around the room now and I'm like, oh, this is curious. I don't know what's happening. But I showed him how to grieve too. I said, just imagine this long tube underneath you, like a trash chute, or sitting on a tree trunk if you prefer, but let the roots go all the way to the center of the earth. And I said, just let's let that upset energy go. Grief for really young ones is not a normal emotion. It's pretty complex. So it just feels like upset, right? And so I said, just let the upset go. And within just a few minutes, he had shifted his space from total emotional overwhelm, unconsolable. No one could quite figure out what was going on with him here and how to calm him down and get him back in the game. Meanwhile, it's other people are looking around, and now the rest of the family's upset because there's a scene. And, all of that scene, you realize, puts additional input to the sensitive person. So, and we can talk about that a little more. But so, with just a few minutes and showing him some skills of basically how to release other people's energy out of his space, and it was like a light switched. As soon as he dropped that, it was just like, whew. And it doesn't have to take a lengthy time. You don't have to go into a deep meditation, set up candles and crystals, and have I don't know, some essential oils. You can, that's great. But you can also do it on the fly here too. So changed his energy in a few minutes. He went right back to playing the game, and all of the parents and everybody are like, oh, thank God. I don't know what that was about, but we just have this sensitive kid and this is a problem. Well, that's the way I grew up too. So you can see in that example that you can change your energy. And it's not the kind of thing we have been taught. Like when I said when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, it's a big push at that time to just be like other people, be like the other kids and you'll be fine. So it's the parents are thinking that's the strategy for being a good person. It's just a strategy of the day. That makes sense. So I'm trying to fit in and I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in. So how many of you out there feel like I've been trying to fit in, but I'm different? I'd rather maybe spend a vacation doing a yoga retreat or something that's more relaxing and kind of pulling myself into a place where I can restore my energy than maybe going to an amusement park. Imagine a sensitive person at an amusement park. It's sensory overload. So what's the dynamic of what's going on here? We know about there's a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, and therapists that can help you with all the emotional stuff, how to communicate, how to set good boundaries. That's all great. Do that. Yes. Now, in addition, you can look at the way your energy is moving, and I would offer for you that the sensitivities of, especially, let's use emotions first. The sensitivity of emotions is not coming from, I want to feel your worry right now. I don't. You know, as a sensitive person, somebody walks in the room, no, I don't prefer to feel worry. I'd like to be happy. But then we tune in and we feel worry anyway. So how's that happening and why? And then how do we shift it? So this is happening more on the energy management level than on the emotional level. And it's confusing because it registers in the emotions, but it actually is happening on an energy vibration. It's essentially like a sensitive person being able to dial in a radio to just tune in to people's emotions. Somebody else might dial the radio in and tune into people's thoughts. And somebody else turns that radio into maybe a healing level. Where's kind of a healing diagnosis level? And then there's all the spiritual realm too. Maybe somebody's tuned in to like angels. You can hear them sing. Yes, you can hear them sing if you tune in. So a highly sensitive person I would offer for consideration is able to pick up those extra signals. But then we're not knowing how to manage it, and it becomes an overload on the physical level. So for emotions, for example, I was saying if you're naturally tuned in and interested on that emotional level of how other people are doing, because I love emotional development. I'm curious about you. Where's your emotional development today? So through that interest as one level, but also our own individual soul development, like we're all in different grades and we're working on different curriculum. And there can be a variety of where you're in, you know, what you're working on, what curriculum you're in. Be in that curriculum, learn it as best you can, then go to the next curriculum. If you're tuned in on an emotional level, it's like a dolphin kind of pinging out to the environment. And then you're aware of that. You notice I don't use the word absorbing because even though that kind of makes sense, it feels like that. You haven't actually absorbed it. You've matched it. You've matched the level of where their emotional energy is. So somebody walks in, they're just piping mad. Is that a good Southern quote? They're piping mad and they walk in the door and you're like, oh, look out. But then before you know it, this anger energy has been vibrating here. And now I start to vibrate with anger energy here, but I wasn't angry today. So it's not an emotional problem that I need to solve that way. I need to solve my anger. Wait a minute, I wasn't angry today. I was having a great day. But now I'm aware of anger energy. This is a distinction here. So if we're aware of it that way, then then we can shift it. We can change it. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, you find it valuable, please like, share, comment, make sure and hit notifications so you can join future ones. Let me know that this is valuable for you and I'll keep going. Also, just to let you know, tomorrow, Saturday, January 11th, I'm doing a class called Awaken Your Spiritual Potential, where we'll go into meditation, a couple of meditations, and take a look at building your abilities of being able to see, hear, and know truth for yourself. So that's the clairs, clairvoyance, clear seeing, claircognizance, clear knowing, clairaudience, clear hearing, clairsentience, clear feeling. So we'll look at those abilities. What are they? How to access them. We'll do some actual exercises. And the last half hour, there's a chance for a mini read if you join the class. So my website link is over here. So we were talking about sensitivities and how it works on an energy management level. And here's another point too, that on an energy management level, this is a trickier one because highly sensitive person, let's go back to our list for a minute and just look at one of those from a different perspective here. I have a rich, complex inner life. Yeah, if you're aware of these extra bands of awareness, people's thoughts, people's emotions, where the angels are, guides, deceased loved ones, if you're aware of these different things going on and you're also looking at the bird out the window and the fence and the trees and stuff, there's a lot more information input coming in than just the screen and the technology here. There's lots of other levels going on. And this is normal, this is natural, this is the state of evolution of consciousness that we're all going through right now. So for a highly sensitive person to look back at this list and go, I have a rich, complex inner life. Well, that's just me. I have to learn to deal with it. Yeah, and embrace it because you're aware of these extra levels. You can then decide, oh, I just want to tune in to my deceased loved one. It's Nana's birthday on Thursday or today, and I really want to communicate with her. You can decide to tune in on that level. Let's look at another one. Uncomfortable by loud noises. This gets into more the physiology side on the body level. But again, if vibration is really sensitive, if you're sensitive to all these levels, then you're going to be sensitive to the physical levels as well. For me, I've had to also learn, this is just for me, I'm not saying for anybody else, but for me, I've learned too that some supplements or medications that they might say the right amount for my weight or age or size or whatever, but I realized that just a little bit gets me in the right direction. Of course, I'm not telling you what to do, always work with your doctor, but I did try some aminos, I think it was one time, and the right dose for my weight or whatever had me seeing double. So that didn't work. I had to really, really pare it down. Let's look at another item on the list from a different perspective. I'm conscientious. I would expand that too, that you're interested in another person's welfare, you're aware of where they are, you're naturally tuned into the weirdo across the room that's going through something, aren't you? Because a lot of us are natural healers. We really care about others and we want to help. That puts you in a different category, doesn't it? Embrace it. Let's look at another item. I make a point to avoid violent movies and TV shows. So if you're, yeah, why subject myself to that when I could be looking at where the angels are, or I could be looking at so many nicer things? Here's something to keep in mind. So I gave the example of a 9-year-old picking up grief energy from a older relative going through the loss of a husband. Well, imagine sitting in a room with a movie theater and people's emotions going up and down. And if you're sensitive and you haven't learned how to manage those abilities yet, then you could whole room full of people's energy. You can shift that. So, well, we're getting close to the end. Without going into more examples, let's get into what are some practical things you can do. So in the example of you're in a movie theater and having your awareness of where everybody is, we all have a bubble around us that's our aura. It's a part of your energy to check one thing. Is your aura spread out into the next county? Are you spread out into the whole movie theater? Bring your energy in. If you're going on an airplane, bring it in really tight. If you're going to a ball game or a great concert and you want to feel the joy a little bigger, you can kind of spread it out and feel more joy. But generally, make sure your energy is not spread out to other people's space. Bring it in. I'll give you another example about that. Working with somebody, I do private sessions and I do readings and healings and so forth. Working with someone recently, and she's saying, I want to feel more separation from my ex. He's in my head every day. And I look and I go, oh, actually, the first thing I see is she's in his space. And so I described there's a line of energy going from maybe, the person's heart to the other person's throat. Now, what does that mean? So a line of energy like a cord. So an energy coming from her heart is you've hurt my heart. You've hurt my sense of who I am. And that cord, that connection goes to his throat. It's going to his throat communication saying, I need you to apologize. I need you to say I'm okay. I need you to communicate something, or maybe not communicate something harmful. And so she's actually having energy coming from her saying that I'm not okay until you take an action. And in this case, it was until you until you apologize, let's say. And so every day she's going, oh, there's that guy's in my space, that guy's in my space. Well, actually, check and see, is my energy in your space? And so this can be a big part of it. It's not letting anybody off the hook for bad behavior. It's just unhook that, bring your energy back, and that's where you start feeling the freedom. So where's my energy? Where's my aura? And I would check that first. And then another big tip is to have a daily practice. I work with people all day long, so I like to shift my energy in between clients. I schedule a 15-minute break in between where I can cleanse out the person's energy and the matches I have with them. I just flush that out, clean that out, and reset so I can look at the next person really clear and clean through a clear visor, that's not being tainted by what I was picking up earlier. So what else? So a daily practice of shifting your energy that way, especially if you've been around a large group of people and you can flush that energy out. I used to do volunteer work like in jails, well-known prison that I would go to and do volunteer work. I want to for sure set up my energy really carefully before I go in, and then I'm going to flush it out and cleanse my energy when I walk out those huge doors out when I leave the prison. So if you're a sensitive person and you're saying, oh, I'm sensitive, I can't do this, I can't go volunteer like I did in the prison, I can't go to those events where people are upset, I can't do this, I can only do this for a little bit. Yes, you can, if you learn and practice some tools. But it's like anything, you can't just take one training and say, well, I did that weekend thing, now I'm not fixed. You have to practice it every day. You got to take care of your teeth every day. You can't say, well, I brushed my teeth on Saturday really, really good by this method that somebody on TikTok said. No, you got to brush every day. You got to floss every day. And if you're sensitive to energy, you got to clean your energy every day. And that means flushing out everybody else's that you've been aware of, that you've accidentally picked up, and reset with your own energy. If you want to learn more, I hope you'll join me tomorrow, Saturday. I'm having a class, Awaken Your Spiritual Potential, where we'll go into meditation. We'll do these exercises. It's easy, it's fun, and you'll be around a like-minded group of people. If you haven't joined my mailing list, the link is over here. Scroll down and make sure you're on the mailing list to find out about upcoming specials. upcoming classes. And as always, I work individually with people and I do healing packages if you have a lot of stuff going on in your life that needs some more support. So thank you for joining me, and take a look back on some of the earlier YouTube lives. There might be some content there you're interested in. Love to hear your comments, and I'll see you on the next one.